And just thank you so much for joining us tonight. First, we just want to say we really miss y'all. This has been different, not being able to be face-to-face. We really love that face-to-face personal interaction. So we have been adapting tremendously in the last few weeks. We're really grateful to have you here with us this evening. And we also just want to say that our thoughts and prayers are with everyone who is impacted by this pandemic. There are so many different levels of impact that we're all experiencing. We really hope and pray that you and yours are well and staying well. And we're really hopeful that the content on this evening's webinar is going to be really useful to you. We're really fortunate to have the speaker that we do this evening. And, you know, I think I see maybe a couple clients who are clients of other advisors of ours who I haven't had the opportunity to meet in person yet. So for those of you who I don't personally know yet, my name is April Reed Cruz. I am one of the fiduciary advisors, co-COO of Reed Financial Group. And we're excited about tonight. So for those of you who already heard this, I know this might be a little bit redundant. Some of you are still joining, however. So you will see an area that should be towards the bottom of your screen if you hover your cursor over where that video is, where it says chat. We are going to be accepting questions all the way throughout the webinar this evening. You can type them in there at any time. I would encourage you, you will notice after you click on that chat feature, it will say all panelists and attendees. I will encourage you, I will be moderating this evening's webinar. So I'd encourage you to select my name, April Cruz, instead of where it says all panelists and attendees. And this way we can make sure that no one else sees your name or your question. So we're happy to take those questions as you have them. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my sister Abby to share a little bit more with you about our guest for the evening for our first of our new webinar series, Health and Wealth. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much, April. It's nice to see you. We have been quarantining at different houses, of course, so following the CDC and the Georgia shelter in place order. So it's nice to see people and spend some time with y'all. It's nice to see everybody else on the webinar as well. Thank you so much for joining us and spending some time with us. We, like April said, we miss y'all so much, and we're looking forward to being able to see you again as soon as this, hopefully soon, as soon as this is over. We're looking forward to that. So I am going to introduce Matt to you, Matt Miller. We have known Matt for over 10 years now. He's been an invaluable asset to Reed Financial Group and has been a big part of our growth and our success throughout the last decade. Among his credentials, he is a board-certified coach, a licensed professional counselor, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator certified, ISTJ here, and a CrossFit Level 1 trainer. He has a very broad and diverse range of credentials, and I just think that is so neat. It offers, he really can have a holistic approach, and I really appreciate that. Matt offers performance, executive, leadership, and business coaching to clients that include high-level executives, business owners, entrepreneurs, financial advisors, and professional athletes. On an individual level, Matt coaches people on evidence-based methods for coping with stress and anxiety. And he truly is the calm in the center of the storm, which we all need. It's our pleasure to introduce Matt Miller. Matt, take it away.
Wow, thank you so much for that introduction. I think it's the best one I've ever had.
You deserve every bit of it.
Thank you. Well,
you're welcome.
I really appreciate everyone being on the call. I hope that I can be of value. That's the intent today, is to be valuable and helpful to somebody. And I'm open to any questions. I thought I would start off by saying that I think that in my career, working at different times, we've had national emergencies or unique situations occur. And of course, while having relationships with clients as a counselor, people would come into the office and we would talk about those things. something that's really unique about this time is maybe they can't make it into the office to talk about it. So technology has really positioned us, in one of the neatest ways, and that is we can stay connected. So even if we haven't always felt comfortable with things like social media or teleconferencing, now it's like a lifeline for some of us, maybe most of us. And I would say that before I get into any of my own kind of ideas on how to best manage, at least for my part in this talk, the health part, the mental health, I think that you guys called it health and wealth. I would like to say that I'm just one counselor. I'm just one coach. And this is just kind of my ideas on this. And these are options you may want to consider. Always check with a professional if you want to enter into following any kind of treatment methodology. And another thing is what I'm doing to avoid paralysis by analysis is I'm trying to keep the information really specific and small, the information sources. And so I would start off by saying, to manage the angst, I believe one of my coaching clients said, I feel all this angst because they're at home with their school-age kids who all of a sudden, I may have some entrepreneurs who are fire breathers in their own businesses, but now they're homeschool teachers and still business owners. So having a lot of angst, if you're having that, I would say the first thing we want to do is make sure that we have the facts. One of the things we do in cognitive behavioral psychology, which is something I'm trained in and I use, is we teach our clients in a loving and caring way. Hopefully, we try to help them see that there's wisdom in disputing irrational beliefs. We call it DIBS for short, D-I-B-S, disputing irrational beliefs. And when people get really full of that angst, one of the first things they do is they start challenging really fairly clear, rational thinking. And what we want you to do is keep your information sources simple, and we want you to avoid the paralysis by analysis bug that hits some of us. When we switch a channel, there's another loud voice, and we switch a channel and we check our Twitter feed and we talk to our friends and loved ones. So that would be the very first thing I would do in helping me deal with the anxiety and the stress that's going on. There's a lot that we don't know. There's something that we learn about in counseling training when we go to training to become a talk therapist, a psychotherapist. We're taught this concept of learned helplessness. There's that word, learned helplessness. So if you think about that for a second, what is learned helplessness? And so what we know learned helplessness is, and a lot of research that was done in the late 60s, early 70s, is that when you don't give someone an escape, when there's nowhere else to turn and they just have to take whatever they're going through. And these, we were able to control a lot of things in our research studies. But whenever you tell someone there's no escape and you don't provide any access for relief from what they're going through, this becomes really traumatic for people. And so the truth is that there is an escape. The CDC and our state officials and the professionals in all of this are telling us there's a lot of stuff you can control. So we really don't have to be helpless. We're not without help. And of course, as you were talking, Abby, earlier, there are people who are really just emerging as heroes during this. So to deal with the angst, we would urge you to keep your, just kind of to summarize here, and then I'd love to hear what anybody wants to ask or what you guys think about this. But the first thing is address the anxiety by, number one, keeping the information source specific and small, and knowing that we're not helpless. There is relief. There are things that we actually have in our control. In the self-help world, we talk about the serenity prayer, right? And so the serenity prayer really says that there's things you have control over and things you don't. And so the first thing is control the information by limiting it and remembering that there is access to freedom and relief. What do you guys think?
Thank you very much for Matt's that for what I was thinking is just so much does seem out of our control. And so just trying to focus on the things that we can control. Something that we have talked about in the past is maintaining a routine, even though it's probably a much different routine than we're used to. There are things that I used to be able to go and do that I can't do anymore. So go to the gym, hang out with my family, see friends, things like that. So I'm just having to pivot a little bit. And some days are easier than others, definitely. But focusing on the things I can control, and trying to limit my intake of the news while still staying informed, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really, really important. April, what are your thoughts?
Well, one, Matt, a question here. How social media, Facebook, whatever it might be, is a really common way for all of us to stay connected right now. Mm-hmm. In this social distancing, stay at home order, whatever it is. We've got a lot of people on this call from different areas. So I think the gist of the question is, how do we utilize tools like that to stay connected to our loved ones without getting consumed with all of the news articles and everything else that comes into that data feed? And just while I'm here as well, it looks as though earlier I stated that you would select my name. The panelists, you will actually click on all panelists. Apparently that default setting changed a bit. Only the advisors will see that, so you don't have to worry about anyone else seeing your name. I just wanted to make sure everyone saw that update in the chat feature. But that was the question, Matt, was just these tools that we also utilize to just stay so connected during these distance times, how to balance that.
You know, the same way that we would need to, and maybe we didn't know this before. Maybe we weren't as hypersensitive to it before. Now we definitely know that if we're trying to manage the anxiety and the stress that we allow social media to create in our lives, because the companies are smart, they know how to advertise to us, those algorithms. You know, how many of us have walked out of the room, came back in, and the first thing we see is something relative to what I was just talking to somebody about. It's listening all the time, and for some folks, it makes them very anxious to imagine that. But I would say the same thing here is what we need to do all the time with social media. This is something I talk about as a counselor so much now in my counseling sessions. This person didn't like this. This person hasn't commented on my picture that I posted. And then in between all that, it's all the horror stories and the advertisements. How do you manage it? Well, the first thing is if it's someone that you're keeping up with and they're kind of keeping up with you and you've got a pretty good relationship with them, this is where you get into the whole instant message game, or the direct message, I guess, the DMs as some folks call them, right? So in your social media applications, almost all of them have this kind of private messaging source. So you immediately bypass all of the advertisements by staying connected in that way. If you want to directly talk to someone, if you are privately just kind of scrolling through social media but not having conversations with people, well, then that's probably a different conversation, right? But to avoid the onslaught, and especially during the political season, we're really going to ramp it up here pretty soon, right? And so to avoid a lot of that stuff, I'd get into the direct message approach, and or uh, maybe just use the old fashioned, I can't believe I'm saying this, text people. Email is amazing, and I really don't know what I would do if somebody sent me an actual letter in the mailbox. Would that be interesting or what? I
I
hope
think
that answered the question.
I think that's actually a fantastic idea right now. I was thinking about that the other day for those of us who even have any stamps, but just that personal contact could
Wow.
mean a lot to certain people right now. So thank you for that, Matt.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I guess I'll just keep going. I've got a couple of more items here. I know we're not going to be on here super long, but the things that I see working with folks, and really the peers that I've talked to who are also counselors, who are seeing a lot of folks via telehealth um, technology and stuff, is having a routine. It may not be the same routine you have. Like you were saying, Abby, you can't access your gym. Maybe you can't shop at the same stores. Maybe that's also revealing something, by the way, a little side conversation here. Maybe if you're anxious about not being able to go shop at like a clothing store or a brand name type store, if you're feeling that really is going to help your emotional intelligence. You're learning that maybe that's something I used to turn to when I was what? When I was anxious. Maybe I did some, comfort eating. And this is all very understandable. It doesn't mean that we're horrible people. It doesn't mean that, oh my goodness, I need this very serious treatment. It just means that it's a point of information, a data point to keep in mind when things go back to the new normal. Having a routine, though, that's based on what you have right now, but then have a routine. So what I mean here is if I can't go to the gym anymore that I used to go to, I'm used to taking the kids to school or the grandkids, or I'm used to going to the golf club or the tennis place or wherever I'm used to going, the church function. What I would say is create a new routine. We do have some time to do that. And try your best to stick to that. And of course, the stuff that we put in our routine is going to be really important, right? So in the routine, we know that people who do things like meal prep or prepare meals in advance, people who, of course, are trying to abide by a healthy nutrition plan, that's going to be helpful to our health. And I would say some kind of movement. There's a lot of Netflix and chill going on. And there's a lot of that scrolling of the social media. It's understandable. And maybe you live in an area where you can't just freely go out and take a walk, a long, unimpeded walk. But, you probably have room to do, if you can handle it, of course, if you have the ability to. And I want to be sensitive to that. If you can, what about a little bit of stretching, a little bit of air squats, sitting down into a chair, standing up? The CrossFit coach in me will come out here. We better be careful. But these are the kinds of things that you put in your routine, and it's really hard to say that I got distracted by something else right now. So what do you guys think about a new normal when it comes to a new routine? I think she's got her mic clicked on
April,
accidentally.
unmute yourself.
No one's ever said that to me before. I think for me, and again, we can accept comments here as well as the questions coming in. So if any of you have anything that you'd like to share as well, please certainly let us know. I did a little exercise the other day where I took the last piece of paper and the notepad I use all the time, and I wrote a list of quarantine blessings on the front of it and a list of things that I will do when I can on the back side of it. It was very therapeutic for me. It's something I add to and look at frequently, but additionally, in the time that we have, the additional time that we have that we're in our home, I think there's a lot of opportunity right now to create habits that we may typically not make the time for or have the time for, and just prioritizing those things. I know, Matt, you could speak to this a lot better than I can, but I know there are a lot of studies that state that certain habits take about 21 days to form, and looks like we might have that. So whether it's quiet and prayer time or exercise or meal prep or whatever home projects that might be, I really think there's opportunity in this for us to really form those new habits and get them to stick.
I love that gratitude exercise is kind of what I would view that as. That is just one, it's kind of what we would call a positive psychology, a technique and strategy. I highly recommend that. That's a great idea, April. I see a question about advice on caregivers to seniors when we can't see our elderly parents due to social distancing. I'd love to try to answer that. I believe we brought it up earlier. When is the last time that senior, that older adult, that loved one in our life received a letter in the mail? This is nostalgic. And if you guys have ever felt that feeling of nostalgia, going to a place that you haven't been to in a long time, and all of the emotion that can be drawn can really come up inside of us, and we can experience this really heightened sense of appreciation for an old memory. Writing someone a letter, yeah, you can't see them right now in person. And I've heard stories of people going to certain facilities and having to sit outside and just wave. And it seems sad. I guess it would depend on how you view it. It could also be, isn't it awesome that I could get out and at least see them physically and wave at them? That's another way of looking at it. But I love the idea that you guys came up with of actually writing a sincere letter and what that might cause them to experience. And that is, of course, if they're in the position that they can still read a letter, they can still access it somehow. Hopefully they've got somebody getting their mail for them. That's one creative way. This is a great time. I tell you, a lot of us have gotten called out on the carpet on this. Those of us who had a whole lot of opinions, mostly negative, about social media and all this kind of stuff, it has literally been the thing that's helped so many people stay in touch. In the fitness community that I do a lot of work in, alone, it's like none of us can work out with each other, and that's something it keeps us healthy. We look forward to. And so what have we been doing? We've been posting videos and pictures of us working out and commenting back and forth, which is what we'd be doing if we were in person. So whatever you got to do to stay in contact, absolutely. I love that.
Thank you very much for that. And two other things here. One is a comment that says crafters refer to it as Happy Mail.
Happy Mail.
We mail goodies to each other. It usually includes a card and just goodies that the person may enjoy. I've also heard that referred to as lumpy mail. That, we get so much junk that if it's something that has some content to it, and when you're going to open it and see what's in there. So Happy Mail, lumpy mail. It's kind of a fun thought there too, perhaps about maybe an additional added touch to those letters to send to just kind of brighten someone's day in perhaps a really simple way there.
Absolutely. When we talk about gratitude, especially when I work with folks who are dealing with some like conflict resolution stuff, two people just aren't really clicking in, whether it's a business role or whether it's in a personal, maybe a romantic relationship. We do this gratitude exercise. We get each person to write down what is it that they like about the other person, because we definitely are an expert about what we don't like at certain moments. But in that happy mail, in that gratitude exercise spirit, if you wrote a letter to somebody just to tell them what you miss about them, this kind of stuff works. And it's perfect time for us to develop a new habit that hopefully will carry over, just like with social media, learning how to use it for good once this is over.
And Matt, more and more questions and comments coming in here. Popcorn in a movie is a great lumpy mail idea right now is one. Another question for you: how do we interact with grandchildren that don't understand the virus thing?
Absolutely. And of course, it would be age specific on how I would approach certain things. And, different kids are at different maturity levels, right? So one thing that I have always tried to do, I've worked with people who suffer from addiction for many years. And if you do any work with addiction, you're going to end up doing a lot of work with the families. Or at least you're going to attempt to reach out to them. And at a minimum, you're going to talk about family dynamics with the person who is suffering from the addiction. And so one of the things we try to do is say, hey, when it comes to talking to your kids about where mom has been the last, 30 days of inpatient, or what mom's going through. She's going to a doctor now. It's part of her new routine. She's taking this medicine to help her deal with this or that. What we want to do is speak in generalities and not get preoccupied with being technical. Right now there's something going on that's kind of like the cold, except it's something that's, real easy for people to catch, right? So we just have to really be careful with being outside and sharing toys and stuff. It's really going to depend on how old the kids are, on, which avenue you take. With an older child, maybe a preteen or a teen, we can have more uncomfortable conversations with them. I would not want to, hear something that is, we were talking about learned helplessness earlier. And this is one guy, just me and my experience saying this, that as a healthcare professional, I believe one of the problems in our society right now is that we don't have enough uncomfortable conversations with our kids. We don't let them fall. We don't let them play outside. We don't let them experience things. I'm not saying go let them catch COVID-19. I am saying that it's not going to hurt, that I know of. There's no evidence that says if you talk to your child about the truth, right, that it's going to hurt them. For them to be uncomfortable and to take it really serious, I don't have any evidence that they will be so traumatized. It's only if they had no escape. You see, we talked about learned helplessness is only traumatic when you don't see that you can escape. And so here, I would really double down on if they're at a maturity level and an emotional intelligence level that they can handle it. And I don't know if I can make that determination for you, but you can. I would rather them develop kind of this frustration tolerance, what we call it, the ability to manage things. Man, they're being set up to be really strong the more realistic we can be with them. I hope I answered that question. I get passionate about learned helplessness and frustration tolerance.
I think you answered that very well, Matt. Thank you. This one is a little bit of a shift in topic, but a lot of information in the media and social media right now about the impact on those who struggle with anxiety and depression in these times. If you could maybe speak a bit to those two particular struggles that people have and how something like this impacts them. And I think just from previous conversations as well, if maybe you could incorporate the importance of physical activity.
Absolutely. I would be more than happy to. And, I've had a peer or two over the years with just, interesting phrases and acronyms that we all use. But I had a peer one time that said that depression is really worrying about what has happened in the past, and anxiety is worrying about what hasn't happened yet. I don't in any way want to minimize. These are serious clinical mental health diagnoses. So if you're really having true depression, right? If you're really having anxiety or panic disorder related symptoms, physical activity is a short term, it's really powerful, and so is nutrition. Physical activity has short-term benefits to mental health. So how you feel, you can almost immediately experience something positive from that, the chemicals that you stir up when you exercise. Well, it has long-term effects if you make it a routine. So, I've heard people say it's, harder to kill a strong person. Maybe that's true. Right? Maybe not just physically strong, but also mentally strong. And the cool thing about exercise is it develops both the physical and the mental. It's really hard to stick with anything, and it's even harder to stick with something that can be uncomfortable. But the beauty is when you start getting the return on your investment. So physical activity has the short-term kind of instant gratification from how it makes you feel when you're doing it, right after you finish doing it, but it has long-term benefits. But I want to say this, you cannot out-train a bad diet. You can go out there and try to get the instant gratification, and you might find yourself just exercising all the time, which for some of us, we need to recuperate and recover. But if you're not doing the nutrition part, you just don't get as much return on your investment. So we would highly recommend you kind of attack it from both angles. We say off the couch and off the carbs, okay? And so there's a lot of information out there. I recommend you guys go to CrossFit.com, not only because I'm a CrossFit coach, but because I don't know of any other fitness methodology that incorporates nutrition to the scientific level that they do. And they have so many scaled workouts you can do at your home without any equipment. All age groups, different variations, and they keep it fresh every day. Again, that's CrossFit.com. I would say for my folks who have depression and anxiety that there's an excellent source, APA.org. www.apa.org. That stands for the American Psychological Association. All right. So on there, they'll have a banner right at the top of the first page that pops up there that'll say something about COVID-19 resources. And I would recommend you guys click on there. There's so much information on that website. So hopefully, again, that was at least something to get you guys started.
I have another question here. So you talked a little bit about frustration resistance and some of the day-to-day things that we could easily do before all of the changes happened are a little bit more difficult, especially the learning curve of technology. So do you have any specific tips or tools or techniques to use, just kind of just getting through the day to day and not focusing too much on all the things that can't be done or the things that maybe are very different?
Yeah. Well, this is a great question. All of these are just really thoughtful. I believe that as somewhat dependent as we are on screens, you know, the screen on your computer, the screen on your television, the screen on your phone. Some people have these, refrigerators that have a screen on them. You know, there's a screen everywhere. I would say limiting your screen time. And although one of the symptoms of depression can be that people sleep a lot when they're depressed, I will say this. Part of the routine, I would think, is, you know, our bodies already have this thing, this kind of clock inside of us that lets us know it's starting to get dark. We actually start shutting down typically, unless we've got something going on, maybe emotional, some kind of chemical thing going on that may keep us awake. But I'll tell you, we start limiting our screen time. And if I'm going to make a list, don't make it on a screen. Sticky note, a dry eraser board, crayons on a piece of art paper. I would do stuff like that. So you still have a list. For my list makers, they'll really love that. But don't use the screen, because, you know, you don't want to keep wearing yourself out with that screen. Again, like April said earlier, people get overwhelmed by those pop-up ads and things. So I hope I'm answering your question, Abby. Really reduce screen time, use alternative methods, and part of that routine, you know, we said exercise, nutrition, meal preparation, sticking to that routine, make part of the routine that at a certain time I start winding down. And there's nothing worse for your sleep than caffeine. So I've heard it said different times, but I go with 6 o'clock. After 6 o'clock, I can drink something that's flavored as long as it doesn't have caffeine in it. And so it's going to help me. Sleep is so important, especially when you guys start doing all this exercising and stuff. You're going to need that sleep, man.
Matt, I'm jealous of your 6 o'clock caffeine cutoff time. Mine's somewhere between 3 and 4.
So is it working?
Yes, it does. It helps tremendously.
I'm so sensitive to caffeine. And finally, my wife said, well, the only thing we haven't tried, you know, we blacked out the windows so there's no light shining. We cut off everything. I think I had something charging plugged into the wall and this little green light to show that it's charging, but it just seemed so bright to me. So, man, reducing caffeine has just been amazing for my sleep.
I think we're pretty well caught up on questions here, Matt. So I don't know if we want to ask one more round of questions, or if maybe, I know we're getting to the end of our time here, if you had anything else. We had talked about maybe if we had time talking a little bit about the CBT formula. I don't know if you want to spend a moment on that, or if there was something else you wanted to spend the last few minutes on.
I want to share something with you guys that just really seems to be moving the needle. I'm going to try to bring this up. You guys will tell me if this pops up on the screen here. You guys see that whiteboard?
Yes.
All right. So if you can see here, I'm going to try to get my tech to work. You know, a lot of people, when tough times happen, they'll do this. Can you guys see that?
We can.
Yeah. People have a tendency to complain when things are tough. And I understand, and it's probably normal. But, you know, to really get through something like this, to not just survive, but to thrive during something like this, maybe we don't want to be normal. And so one thing that we always recommend, and this would be down the alley of disputing irrational beliefs, changing your mindset, choosing. You know, we say you're not a born winner, you're not a born loser, you're a born chooser, right? So I can choose how I'm going to be affected by something. And it literally is a choice. It's a choice whether I stomp my foot in the toy aisle of life about something, right? Or if I say, hey, this isn't what I would like it to be, however, I'm okay. And let's see what kind of opportunity is going to come out of this. Wow. I mean, all of a sudden I have more energy just saying those words. So what we say that complaining actually affects something, and what we say is complaining causes discouragement. So if you're already discouraged, if you're bothered, let's say you have maybe not a clinical level of depression or anxiety, but you have that angst, you've got the stress, the situational stress that we're going through right now, and you're responding in that stressed out emotional state. If you're already stressed and then somebody comes in and they pile on more and they start complaining, you see that complaining causes people to be discouraged. If I hear someone, all of us on this call, if we've heard someone complain and we're not necessarily in a bad mood, but then we hear them complain, we kind of let that affect us. And so what we would say is pay special attention to this word right here. And that right there is what we all have. We wake up every day, and I choose to believe this, that I'm given a full tank of courage in a way. I open my eyes, I've got another day, right? It's another day, it's a new day, and I get to choose. And what we know about our language is that this means to take away, to minimize, to lower. So if I start off with a certain amount of courage, but then I'm around someone who complains, even if it's me, I'm around me all the time. And if I'm complaining, I'm actually minimizing the courage that I started the day with. And I need all my courage. I don't need to do anything that takes away. So listening to those, and I'll kind of summarize the points here, we want to deal with the stress and the anxiety of what we're going through by minimizing, limiting, but being very consistent with our news sources. And one way we can do that is we can actually minimize our screen time, but have a routine. Hey, I'm checking the news at this time. I'm checking this station, this website. Instead of being affected by social media in the ways that those companies have learned to market and advertise to me, I'm going to do direct messaging or texting or send letters in the mail to communicate with people that I'm very close to, all right? Instead of being affected by that screen. It's also going to help me sleep if I limit the screen time. We know it really stimulates us. The companies are smart. They know how to get our attention. They know how to keep it. I'm not mad at companies in particular. I'm just much more aware of them than I used to be. And so I want people to know that diet and exercise, I would say nutrition and exercise. CrossFit.com, a great resource for your physical health, for your mental health, your mental toughness. You know, they say attitude is a muscle. You have to work it out every day. You wake up, you're a born chooser, right? And so what we would say is choose not to complain. Be the leader who said, hey, you know, where's the opportunity in this? I think that's really all I've got for today. And maybe some other time, because if you guys are doing this series, man, I would be so honored to come back and we could do a whole thing on how to keep a journal, which is huge in mental conditioning on the coaching side of my business. I've got some really high achievers who keep journals, and there's actually a way that we teach you to do it, and it's effective, just like exercise. It works if you work it. So that's all I got. I can't thank y'all enough.
Thank you so much, Matt. You shared such good and practical tools that people can, and I can actually go and use. And that's one thing I really appreciate about you is the tools that are very easy to go and implement right away. And to close, I just want to tell everybody that we will be sending an email out with the resources that Matt talked about. So if that will be helpful to anybody, the CrossFit and the other things that you mentioned. Just want to thank you so much, Matt, for your time. We really appreciate it. You're awesome. And I hope to see you again soon. April?
Thank you.
Unmute yourself, April.
I'm telling you, I have never been told to unmute myself until today, and all of you can tell my technology aptitude. My curve is slow, but I'm getting there. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Almost every single person who joined stayed for the whole call, so we are very glad and hope that meant that this provided you some value this evening. If you have any questions that you didn't have the opportunity to ask or that you think of afterwards, email one of us. We're happy to pass those along to Matt, make sure they get answered. And as Abby said, we will pass on those resources that he mentioned as well. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Please take care, stay safe. Let us know what we can do for you. And God bless. We appreciate y'all and have a wonderful evening.